After a great cruise to the Caribbean, I am back to flying. If you haven't seen my series of videos about my trip on the MSC Seashore, don't forget to check them out. Like my aviation videos, I explain the cruise from a unique point of view. The cruise was great, but since it left me in Miami, it's time for me to take to the skies again, and that's what this video is all about. As my ride paralleled the arrivals to the Miami International Airport, I got closer to where all the action is. It's always a thrill approaching any airport, and Miami Airport is no exception, as it is a huge gateway to the Americas, which makes it even more exciting. I informed my driver that my airline today would be Delta Airlines and was driven around the entire terminal complex almost all the way to the very end where Delta check-in desks are located. Well, hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm flying on a Delta Airlines Airbus A321 from the Miami International Airport to New York JFK, and you are coming along with me. Let's go. The terminal building is clearly dated, and it was really crowded the day that I flew, but with my Delta Diamond status, I was able to use the Sky Priority line with no crowd to drop off my bag to New York's Kennedy Airport. This airport is quite crowded this morning, but as usual, as you all know, I've got a lot of time on my hands, so I'm gonna walk around a little bit. This graphic has a great layout of the Miami International Airport terminal. Today, my flight will be departing from the H gates. The terminal is in a U shape. There's not much to see here, so let's go to the air side for some airplane action. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, I got to the airport really early and I just found out that my flight is delayed 1 hour. That means I'll be at this airport for about 5 hours total. Now, I was kind of expecting the delay. The weather en route as well as at the destination is less than ideal. I did check local weather reports in New York City and I do see reports of rain combined with snow, wind. It's not the best day for flying today, but hey, I'm at an airport, so I'm happy. So I'm gonna take the time to explore this part of the Miami International Airport. There's an extensive shopping area between the H and J concourses. This airport is a hub for American Airlines, but this side of the airport is home to other airlines, and the J concourse has a huge international presence. This is a great area to spend some time before your flight, especially when you arrive really early like I do. I'm here so early that my flight is not yet listed on the flight information display system. And there are plenty of windows for ramp and runway views. Here we see Copa and LATAM Airlines, and on runway 27, an American 737 painted in retro Astrojet livery is taking off. This airport is American country, and here's a look at an American 787. Quite a few of the shops here at MIA are actually closed. I don't know if that's because of the pandemic or not, but there's not as much shopping as I saw prior to the pandemic at this airport. That's all right, I'm not really here to shop, I'm here to look at airplanes, and I do want to spend some time at the Delta Sky Club, and I'll be doing that in a little bit. I just don't want to stay in there for 4 hours. It is a pleasant space here, and what I really like is the food selection. Where else can you be at an airport in the USA and find so much food with a Latin flair and particular emphasis on Cuban food? It's right here at the Miami International Airport. I tried a lot of what you see here, and it was one of the best airport meals in the USA that I've ever had. Way to go, MIA. All right, it's time to talk about my seat selection process today for my flight on the Airbus A321. Today, I'll be in the Comfort Plus section, and I'll be sitting in an A seat on the left-hand side of the aircraft. Now, this approach into JFK today calls for the Cameron 4 arrival, which is an arrival procedure from the south. And I figured that I'll get some great views of the Jersey Shore on the left-hand side of the aircraft as I approach JFK. Now, we'll see what the weather is like because it's not looking that great. It may clear up by the end of the day, but hopefully we'll get some nice views, and it's probably going to be pretty dark out by the time I get to JFK today with this delay. Now, regarding the final approach and runway at JFK, well, you know that I focus very heavily on checking the wind at the time of arrival. Well, my arrival time keeps getting pushed back further and further due to the delay. However, the wind is going to remain steady. I am anticipating landing on the 3-1s tonight at JFK, either runway 31 left or 31 right, because the wind is coming from the northwest. And I'm happy that I'm going to be sitting on the left-hand side of the aircraft because we'll be making a left-hand turn onto the final approach course. So hopefully I'll get a nice view of the airport and possibly parts of Long Island. So what about the departure out of Miami? Well, the wind today is coming out of the south, and most of the runways here at Miami International Airport are east-west runways. However, the wind is coming from a direction so that it provides more of a headwind for aircraft to fly in a westerly direction for both arrivals as well as departures. Therefore, we should be taking off towards the Everglades today before we proceed on course. You gotta love the international flair here at the Miami International Airport. With all of the time that I have here on the airside, I want to get up close and personal with the aircraft belonging to the foreign carriers. So after spending time in the shopping area, I walked over to the J concourse where I knew I would find international airlines bound for all over the world. This is a great concourse with its high ceilings, more modern look, and great viewing windows. Oh, and by the way, I just found out that my flight has been delayed even further, so I'm in no rush to get to my departure gate, so why not spend the time here? Being a Delta Diamond Medallion member with Delta Airlines, I have the opportunity to visit any Delta Sky Club before any flight. So with the delay that I'm experiencing, I've got plenty of time to check out the club here. So after spending time in the J concourse, I walked towards the end of the H concourse where the Sky Club is located. But of course, I had to take in all of the sights on the ramp and taxiways out of the many windows here. A walk that should take me 3 minutes took 10 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna go into the Delta Sky Club for a little bit. The Delta Sky Club is located one level up from the departures level, very close to the TSA checkpoint. With the great food that I enjoyed on the departures level, I wasn't too hungry, but I did eat some food because my flight kept getting delayed further. This time around, the food selections were free, however, they didn't provide the unique ethnic flavors that I enjoyed downstairs. Speaking of downstairs, the view out the windows downstairs was a lot better than the view from the windows up here. The Sky Club is on the roof, but set back quite a bit, so for aircraft on the ground, you can only see the tops of their tails, but you can see aircraft that are in the air before they touch down, like this Lufthansa 747. Here's a few more views inside the Delta Sky Club here at Miami International Airport. It is not a good day in the Eastern Seaboard today. This Sky Club is very crowded because many flights are delayed. There's a lot going on today. My flight has been delayed 2 hours and 10 minutes. I'm now approaching the new departure time of 5:53 p.m. for my flight, Delta 1466. So it's time to leave the Sky Club and walk over to gate H11. Okay, I'm getting closer and closer to that A321, which is going to bring me to Kennedy Airport. This airport today is super busy. Here's my Airbus A321 to JFK. I've become a regular on this aircraft type. Here at gate H11, I was the first person on board due to my diamond status despite not having a first class seat this time. It's always a great and fresh feeling when you board an airplane with no passengers on board. This flight is going to fill up quickly, so I'm enjoying the lack of packs for now. The Comfort Plus cabin is arranged in a 3x3 configuration, just like the main cabin behind it, and I'm in row 11, seat A. This plane was delivered to Delta in June of 2018 and can accommodate 191 passengers. 29 of the seats are in Comfort Plus. Just made it on board the A321. Check out row 12. Boy, am I happy I am not in row 12. There's absolutely no window there. Here in row 11, I've actually got two windows. playing any boarding music, which means I can actually talk to you for a few minutes. So our route today is going to be kind of a land route. We'll be going up the Florida coast, basically paralleling the Atlantic Ocean before turning slightly to the right and heading on north to JFK, where we'll be flying the Cameron for arrival. And I'll be monitoring the flight's progress on the seatback map in front of me, which I'll look at after the safety demo. Typically on this route, there's the water route or the land route. Today we'll be taking the land route. Today after departure, we'll be flying the ARPS 1 RNAV departure procedure, which calls for several right-hand turns after takeoff. And I am all eyes out the window, even while sitting at the gate. I can't wait to be airborne. Good videos are accomplished by having clean windows, so I made sure I took the sanitizing wipe that the flight attendant handed to me to rub down each of my windows. While we may be sitting still for the moment, all of the moving parts on the ground are beginning to start like clockwork so that we can leave the ramp in Miami and eventually wind up on the ramp at JFK. Our 2 wing-mounted turbofan engines will take all 146 feet of this airplane skyward very soon. All right, we are over 2 hours late, but boarding is now complete, so let's head on over to JFK.
Here in the cockpit, and welcome aboard Delta Airlines Flight number 1466. I know that you have noticed that most flights are delayed today, pretty much due to all the weather that's going up the East Coast. New York today started out with rain, and then all of a sudden it got really cold. It switched to snow. They ended up getting about an inch of snow. And this plane that we're taking back actually was in all that snow up in New York. So there was extensive delays because of the weather, and that is the reason why we're late. The good news is most of the snow by the time we get up to Kennedy is going to be moved off, so that's good. However, it is going to be windy. It's been a very windy day, so but no snow. So windy and no snow when we get up to New York. Also, the good news is we have some nice strong tailwinds, so that'll help us push us along up to New York. Flying time just over 2 hours today, 2 hours and 11 minutes. The map on the screen shows a straight line from MIA to JFK, but we're going to be taking a route very different from what you see here. Keep watching to find out how we flew up north today. With the ground crew in position to ensure our safety, we've received clearance for pushback onto the very wide ramp behind our gate. The tow slowly initiates our movement backwards. After spending a long time at the airport, I'm finally on my way to JFK. Today we'll be departing on runway 27, which is on the south side of the airport. Runway 27 is actually just right outside of the ramp that we've just pulled out of, which makes for a very short taxi to the runway today. However, we just can't taxi to the beginning of the runway because several other flights requested their clearance with the ground controller to taxi to runway 27 before we did. So instead of making a left turn to the runway's starting point, we make a right turn to follow the queue of aircraft that are waiting to take off. About to get on the runway is a Spirit Airlines A320 with a destination of Baltimore, and behind that plane is a plane that's identical to ours, a Delta A321 headed to Atlanta. Behind it is an American Embraer 170 headed to the island of Great Exuma in the Bahamas. And the Queen of the Skies follows the regional jet. This Atlas Air 747 is a cargo flight to Amsterdam. This 747 is almost 22 years old and is a Dash 400 freighter series. Before flying for Atlas Air, it flew for Eva Cargo after being built in Everett, Washington. I love being able to get this close to such an iconic aircraft that you see less and less of these days. This is followed by a Mexican cargo airline called Estafeta, which is flying an old 737 down to Merida in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. Also going to Mexico is this newer Aeromexico 737 headed to the country's capital. And then there's this United A319 headed to its hub of Chicago O'Hare.
We'll be behind United, so at taxiway Uniform, we make a left turn and swing around to join the queue of flights. That Tampa Cargo A330 on the other side of the runway is headed to Panama City, and it will take off behind us. What a great mix of planes and remarkable destinations. The delay was worth it just to be fit into this amazing mix. As we turn from taxiway Uniform to join the queue on taxiway Quebec, we can see all of the planes we just passed by. And as we turn around, we can see some other unique airplanes, like this Icelandair 757 and this JetBlue A320 dedicated to the Boston Bruins. This Delta 737-900 passing by is an arrival from Detroit headed to the gate. It didn't skip the departure line. And getting ready to join the end of the departure queue is this Southwest 737, nicknamed California 1. Behind Southwest is a United 737-900 MAX bound for San Francisco. At the gate, I spotted a rare bird, a Boliviana de Aviación 767. Miami is the only city in the USA that this airline serves. This plane had previously flew for Alitalia and TAM. The rare carriers are abundant at Miami. I am so glad that my seat is on the left side of the plane, offering these amazing views. We're getting closer to the departure runway, and from here I can see a 747 arriving before a few flights ahead of us. We're almost ready now. The ground controller hands us off to the tower controller, who not only tells us that we can line up on the runway, but we can take off. The crossing runway, runway 30, is clear of arrivals, and the United aircraft that took off in front of us is already airborne. Runway 27, our departure runway, is 13,016 feet long. That is a really long runway, and a lot more pavement than this A321 needs to get airborne. The runway is on the south side of the airport. It parallels Florida State Route 836, also known as the Dolphin Expressway. There are no taxiways between this runway and 836. As I mentioned before while we were sitting at the gate, we'll be flying a departure procedure called the ARPS-1 RNAV departure, which calls for several right-hand turns after takeoff. This is a published procedure that the flight deck crew is prepared to fly once we lift off. Initially, we need to fly straight out at 273 degrees. This takes us towards the Everglades. New York, of course, is north of Miami, so this specific departure procedure has us eventually turn to the right in a series of small turns, so we eventually wind up heading in the general direction of our destination. Of course, we need to follow the published jet routes once we're in the en route phase of flight, but the climb out is designed to bring us to the en route phase. As we take off, we're instructed to talk to a departure controller who's located in what is called a terminal radar approach control facility, an air traffic radar facility. The controller monitors our flight and ensures that we continue along and climb so that we can reach a point to switch to the en route phase of flight. Our initial climb takes us over a very densely populated area. We're now starting a turn to 299 degrees, the first of a series of right turns to bring us toward the north. The series of turns occurs every few miles and eventually brings us toward the general direction that we desire. The city of Miami is behind us, but you can clearly see how populated the area is as we continue toward the northwest for now, moving away from the city of Miami. Today the clouds are high enough to allow me to see everything below while we're still at a low altitude. We're proceeding to a point in the sky called K-Rocks. This is west-northwest of the airport and is part of the ARPS-1 departure. Once we get there, we turn right to a heading of 316 degrees, which is the next slight right turn. 4 miles later, we again turn to the right at a place in the sky called Russ, and it's at this point where we can fly a heading of 8 degrees, just northeast of north. There are more turns in this departure procedure, but you get the point. We need to work our way north to get to JFK, and the ARPS-1 routing helps us get there. We work our way all the way to the Florida Everglades, an unpopulated area, as we continue the climb just before it gets dark out. I'm happy we weren't delayed any further because the entire climb out would have been in the dark, but of course the rest of this flight will occur after the sun has dropped below the horizon. We are now in the clouds, and as we climb higher, the departure controller hands us off to another air traffic control facility, the Miami Air Route Traffic Control Center, which handles all flights at higher altitudes all the way to the Orlando area, where we then are told to contact the next high altitude center, Jacksonville Center. But before we reach our cruising altitude, we must finish following the ARPS 1 procedure by making a left turn over a point in the sky called Agers at 19,000 feet. From there, we fly a heading of 355 degrees, followed by a few slight left-hand turns, which will put us in the Orlando area. Before we took off, I mentioned that aircraft flying this route generally fly either a land or water route. The water route takes flights out over the Atlantic Ocean before joining the land around Wilmington, North Carolina. The land route stays over the land while paralleling the Atlantic coast. The water route is a bit more direct than this one. Once we reach our cruising altitude, we have a great view of the greater Orlando area. Meanwhile, it's snack time in the Comfort Plus cabin, and flight attendants came by with snacks for all of the Comfort Plus passengers. Once we leave the Orlando area, we enter the airspace of Jacksonville Center and talk to controllers there. Jacksonville Center handles high-altitude airspace over northern Florida and parts of neighboring states. And just before leaving the Sunshine State, our flight takes us directly over Jacksonville, Florida, the most populous city in the state. I like to identify as much as I can from the sky, and I've located the Jacksonville International Airport. You can see the terminal with its lights all lit up. We're moving along nicely here, but keep in mind the delay that we had when departing, and remember that many other flights were also delayed this afternoon. Bad weather had passed through New York City earlier, and that caused flights to be delayed in many areas. Our plane came in from New York, and that flight was delayed due to snow. This caused many of the flights that were scheduled to JFK to come in late, many of them all at the same time. Because of this, our mostly straight path towards New York City is too good to be true. Yes, that is about to change. You see, with so many planes all headed to the same destination, many of them are all going to arrive at the same time, and that's just not feasible. So air traffic control has to work with our pilot, as well as the pilots of all the other aircraft coming in, to deviate from the planned course to add more spacing between arrivals. Here's the first turn to the right that we were asked to make. You can see here how we're turning off course and are no longer pointed directly towards New York City. What you can't see here are the other aircraft doing the same thing. We just could not fly one behind the other in a straight line tonight, as we would have bunched up, so this turn was necessary. But it didn't stop there. After many, many miles on this new heading, we, along with everyone else around us headed to JFK, had to turn to the left in the nearly opposite direction we were just flying. But after a turn back to the left, we still could not proceed directly towards New York. We were issued another right turn, roughly paralleling the first turn we made a few minutes earlier. This new heading even brought us out over the Atlantic Ocean a bit. Here we can see part of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. You can see here how the land ends abruptly and the Atlantic Ocean begins where you see darkness, but we didn't stay on this heading for too long. ATC had to start a left turn to the north, just like the aircraft ahead of us, to keep us in the sequence of arriving flights. This turn to the north puts us in position to fly the arrival procedure for flights to JFK arriving from the south, the Cameron 4 arrival, which begins at Sea Isle in Cape May County, New Jersey. Since we took a few extra turns, adding to the length of the flight, I took a quick trip to the rear lavatory to stretch my legs before landing. At this point, we should have been much further ahead of where we are now, and I was expecting some more turns, so I walked to the rear of this A321 and back to my seat in the Comfort Plus cabin. After Sea Isle, we parallel the shore towards the JFK area. We're ready to descend. Once we descend to 11,000 feet to cross Cameron intersection at that altitude, we're handed off from the Air Route Traffic Control Center to the New York Approach Control Facility on Long Island.
Approach Delta 1466, 11.5 to cross Cameron at 11. We've got Foxtrot.
Delta 1466 New York approach, heading 040, vector ILS, runway 31 right approach.
Heading 040, Delta 1466.
We checked in approaching 11,000 feet, which is the altitude that we need to cross Cameron at. Cameron is a point in the sky south of JFK over the Atlantic Ocean, which is the final point of the arrival procedure. We received radar vectors from the approach controller. Today, we were told to fly heading 040, which helps us get into the sequence of arriving flights. The 40-degree heading is a vector, or turn, to bring us to the ILS runway 31 right approach. So we know that we'll be landing on runway 31 right today. We'll continue our descent over the ocean until we reach Long Island, where we'll turn left towards the runway. 40 degrees is a northeast heading which will keep us southeast of JFK, the perfect place to be in to make a left turn to join the instrument landing system. As we get closer to JFK, the controller has us descend lower. Here, after a block transmission, she tells us to descend to 3,000 feet for the ILS runway 31 right approach.
Block.
Delta 1466, that'll be for the ILS runway 31 right approach, descend and maintain 3,000.
Yes, ma'am. We're planning that down at 3,000, Delta 1466.
We're paralleling the Jersey Shore off of our left side, which is why I'm glad I'm on this side of the plane. There's nothing but ocean off the right side, and it's dark out. As we approach 10,000 feet, the flight attendants turn on the interior lights to collect trash and conduct their final safety checks, which makes it pretty hard to see out the windows at night. I can't see with the lights on. In the cockpit, the controller tells our flight to switch radio frequencies to another approach controller since the airspace is very busy. We need a separate controller to clear us for the approach tonight.
Delta 1466, contact approach 125.7.
25.7, Delta 1466, good night. Approach Delta 1466, Niner for 3,000, heading 040.
Delta 1466, right, you me.
Well, after all of the turns from earlier on, we're holding steady on the 40-degree heading for a bit. This heading keeps us on a left base leg for runway 31 right. We're at a 90-degree angle to the final approach course, and all of our subsequent turns are going to be left turns to join the final approach course. From here we can finally see Long Island and Queens, which is on Long Island. Our destination airport, JFK, is in Queens, New York. The dark area, of course, is the Atlantic Ocean, and the lights that you see are ships that are awaiting clearance into New York Harbor, which is off to the left. The bright area of lights that I'm zooming into now is Kennedy Airport. We'll be there shortly, but first we're issued a 20-degree turn to the left to a heading of 20 degrees behind the traffic in front of us.
Delta 1466, turn left heading 020, descend and maintain 2,000.
That's 020 down at 2,000, Delta 1466.
Then we're told to slow down.
Delta 1466, reduce speed to 210 or less.
210 left, Delta 1466.
Once closer to JFK, a look behind reveals only the ships in the ocean, and we're now ready to intercept the final approach course on a 340-degree heading. The approach itself is on a 314-degree heading, and ZooLab is a location on the final approach course 5.3 miles away from touchdown. We're currently 7 miles away from ZooLab.
Delta 1466, 7 from ZooLab, turn left heading 340, maintain 2,000, still established, reset ILS runway 31 right approach.
340 on the heading, 2,000 still established, cleared ILS 31 right, Delta 1466.
Delta 1466, speed 180 or less, power 19.1, take care.
180 or less, tower, Delta 1466, good night.
We're now told to reduce our speed even further, and we can finally contact the controller in the control tower at JFK so we can get landing clearance.
Kennedy Tower, good evening, Delta 1466, 31 right.
Delta 1466, Kennedy Tower, wind 32026, gust 37, runway 31 right, clear to land.
Clear to land 31 right, Delta 1466.
It's a windy evening with gusts up to 37 knots, and we're cleared to land. We're now on the straightened approach to the runway, approaching ZooLab, and below us we can see the barrier island communities of Long Beach and Atlantic Beach in Nassau County. Even though the airport itself is in Queens, our entire approach will be over Nassau County until we reach the airport itself. Once we pass the barrier island, which protects Long Island from the Atlantic Ocean, we fly over Reynolds Channel, a strait that separates the barrier island from the main part of Long Island. We also overfly other areas of marshland and channels such as Broad Channel. These are areas that are uninhabited. We can't see the small islands at night, but the dark area of the screen shows us that we're flying over water. With no streets or home, it just looks like darkness from up here. We'll see more lights when we're over the towns on the far western side of Nassau County just before Kennedy Airport. This includes Cedarhurst, Lawrence, and Inwood. We're all set to land and are headed straight towards the runway. All of the work of the previous controllers was successful, and we're perfectly sequenced in between all of the arriving flights to runway 31 right. No further adjustments to our speed or heading need to be made. I had mentioned earlier that the New York City area had been experiencing less than ideal weather. I'm fortunate that the bad weather systems have left the New York area. Quite often after a storm in New York, the wind tends to come from the northwest, and today is no exception. Even without checking the weather for my time of arrival, my gut feeling was that we would be landing on runway 31 right because this runway is aligned to a northwest heading, which is a great headwind for landing aircraft tonight at JFK. The wind is currently coming from 320 degrees, and we're on a 314 degree heading. Runway 31 right is being used as the landing runway, and the parallel runway, runway 31 left, is being used as the departure runway. Sometimes arriving flights will use runway 31 left for landing, but due to the delays, there are many flights still using runway 31 left for departures, so almost all arrivals tonight are using runway 31 right for landing. We're almost there. It was a long day with many delays, but we'll be on the ground shortly. We're flying over a densely populated residential area, and the runway is right in front of us. Beyond the runway is the rest of the borough of Queens, and just past that is Midtown Manhattan. As a matter of fact, if we were to abandon the approach and keep on flying straight, we'd fly almost right over the Empire State Building. But we're going to land. You can start to make out some water on final approach. These are the waters on the east side of Kennedy Airport, part of Jamaica Bay. Most of the airport is bordered by water, and as we move further along on the final approach, we fly over Thurston Basin before entering airport property. There's a small area of land on airport property on the airport's east side, but it's hard to make out because it's night. We aren't really able to identify the airport itself until we pass over active areas of the airport marked by runway and taxiway lighting. We fly over the beginning of our landing runway, runway 31 right, but can't touch down at the runway's very beginning because it has a displaced threshold, meaning we need to touch down a little bit further from the start of the runway. The full length of the runway is 10,000 feet, and it's a wide runway at 200 feet. We've got plenty of space for this A321 to slow down. As we slow down, the controller in the tower asks us what our gate is and provides instructions on how to get there without having to contact ground control today.
Delta 1466, turn left at Victor, what is your gate tonight?
Victor, we're going to Charlie 66.
Delta 1466, roger. You can make the right turn onto Bravo, Mach ground 49.
Okay, we'll take Bravo, now ground 49, Delta 1466.
From there, we taxied on taxiway Bravo to Terminal 2. What a day and what a flight that was. Just look at all the turns we made to fit into the traffic inbound for JFK. When you see a track like that, you know Kennedy is busy. We're nearing the end of the journey. Thanks so much for coming along with me up the Eastern Seaboard tonight. While this video may be ending soon, there's a lot more to look forward to, as I have many more videos like this to bring to you on my channel. So if you aren't subscribed, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on my upcoming flight videos.